Summer in Miramar always comes suddenly. Yesterday the ocean was lead gray, and today it is already shimmering with all shades of azure. I like to watch this metamorphosis from the window of my office in the municipality. It usually happens in mid-May, about a week before Mother's Day, a holiday I both look forward to and dread every year. My name is Meredith Wembley. I'm 32 years old, and I work as an urban planner for the Miramar administration. My position sounds more impressive than it is. All I do is review redevelopment applications, make sure new projects comply with city regulations, and occasionally speak at public hearings. The work is not very varied, but it gives me stability and the feeling that I have at least some influence on how the city develops. Plus, no one here expects me to do the impossible, unlike my mother, Elaine. Wembley, do you have the Westbrook Avenue report? Carol, the head of the department, pulls me out of my reverie. Yes, I sent it last night, I reply, not taking my eyes off the monitor. Good. The hearing is next week, so I need to be ready to answer questions about the project. Carol is one of the few people who pronounces my last name correctly. To most people, I'm just Meredith. I probably should have taken my stepfather's last name as Page, but I didn't want to sever the last connection I had with my father. Even though he left us when I was only 4 years old, I still remember his smell, a mixture of sawdust and aftershave. He was a carpenter, and his hands always smelled like freshly cut wood. 2 years after he left, Mom met Howard Bright, a successful insurance agent with his own business and a home in the upscale Miramar neighborhood. A year later, Paige was born to them, and I became an uncomfortable reminder of my mother's past life. Since then, our relationship has become a never-ending chase for approval that I never received. Every time I bring home a perfect grade, she says, "But Paige." When I entered Miramar University to study architecture, my mother only shrugged. It's not too prestigious, but it's something. When I couldn't finish my studies due to financial difficulties and went to work for the municipality, she sighed. I always knew you wouldn't have the tenacity. And then there was Grandma Vivian, Mom's mother, but so different from her. She was the only one who truly supported me, who told me I could be proud of myself, even if the world didn't see it. When my grandmother died 5 years ago, I was left all alone. Well, except for Paige, who only calls when she needs money or help with the paperwork on the house she and her husband got from Howard. My grandmother left me an inheritance, enough to buy a decent house or start my own business. But I never touched that money. First because I was afraid of spending it wrong, and then because I got used to my modest apartment on the outskirts of Miramar, to my unremarkable life. I paid rent, bought groceries and clothes only on my paycheck, and my grandmother's money was in my account, waiting for its time. Maybe I hoped that someday I would achieve something on my own, without help, and my mother would finally recognize me. At lunchtime, I go down to the small cafe on the first floor of the municipality where we usually gather with our colleagues. We are four women from different departments, discussing everything from the latest city gossip to politics over lunch. Today's topic is the upcoming Mother's Day. I booked my mom a spa day, says Tammy from the landscaping department. Last year she wasn't happy with the bouquet, said I couldn't even pick the right flowers. And we're having a family dinner, says Jenna from finance. 3 generations at the same table, all day in the kitchen. Bliss. What about you, Meredith? Asks Rachel, the youngest of us who works in communications. I usually send a card, I answer evasively. That's it? Rachel looks surprised. My mom and I have a complicated relationship. I take a sip of coffee, hoping the subject will change. But Rachel persists. And this year, I wonder. Every year I swear to myself that I'll never try to earn my mother's approval again. And every year I break that promise. I guess I'll buy some flowers and stop by for a while, I say, and immediately regret it. Why am I making the same mistake all over again? Maybe this time it'll be different. Tammy looks at me sympathetically. She knows part of my story. Maybe, I answer without much hope. After work, I walk into the supermarket to get groceries. As I walk past the electronics department, I notice a commercial on the TV screen. A happy family celebrating Mother's Day. The daughter gives her mother a bouquet. They hug, laugh. A lump appears in my throat. I return home to my apartment, small but cozy, overlooking the park. There's nothing extra: a couch, a coffee table, bookshelves filled with books on architecture and design. A dream I gave up. On the kitchen wall is the only picture: me and Grandma Vivian on Miramar Beach. I'm about 15, smiling in a way I haven't been able to in a long time. What advice would you give me, Grandma? I ask the picture, setting the grocery bags on the table. Her voice rings in my ears. You don't have to keep proving your worth, sweetheart. You're already good enough just the way you are. But I decide to try again anyway. This Sunday is Mother's Day, and I'll go to Elaine's again with a bouquet and the hope that this time she'll see me, the real me, and not a pale shadow of her unfulfilled expectations. I open my laptop and order the bouquet, not too flashy, but not modest either. Something in between, like the rest of my life. Then I check the account balance with my grandmother's inheritance. The amount has increased thanks to interest. Enough for a fresh start if I ever decide to. The phone rings. Paige's name is on the screen. I hesitate a second before answering. Meredith? Her voice sounds habitually irritated. Did you buy your mom a present for Sunday yet? I'm going to stop by with flowers, I answer. Just flowers? Really? She snorts. Jason and I are getting her a weekend getaway to a spa hotel. Why don't you at least chip in with us? Typical Paige. Doesn't even ask if I have the money for it. Sorry, finances are tight this month, I say, telling the usual lie. Always is, she sighs. Okay, just don't show up with any cheap carnations, okay? Last time my mom complained all night about how you couldn't even afford a normal bouquet. After the conversation, I sit staring out the window for a long time. Behind it, it's slowly getting darker. The lights of the neighboring houses are coming on. Families gather over dinner, discussing their day. Ordinary people with ordinary families, where parents are proud of their children simply for what they are. I can't remember the last time my mom said she was proud of me. Probably never. But I do remember every time she compared me to Paige in a way that wasn't in my favor. Every time she sighed, looking at me like I was a walking disappointment. Every time she said, if you'd only try a little harder. And yet this Sunday I will go to see her again, with flowers and hope. Because she is my mother, and somewhere deep inside I am still that little girl who just wants to be loved. Sunday morning was surprisingly sunny for Miramar this time of year. I woke up earlier than usual with a heaviness in my chest and intrusive thoughts about my upcoming visit. The bouquet was supposed to be delivered by 10, and I'd arranged to be at my mother's by noon. I don't know why I put myself through this torture every year. I guess some part of me still hopes for a miracle. I took a shower and spent a long time choosing clothes, settling on the pale blue dress I'd bought especially for such occasions. Not too formal, but not casual either. My hands treacherously shook as I applied my makeup. It's just lunch, Meredith, I told my reflection. Just a couple hours, and you're free for the year. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. A courier with a bouquet. The arrangement of soft pink peonies, white roses, and lavender looked exactly as I'd imagined. Elegant, but not overly flashy. I put the flowers in water so they wouldn't wilt before I left and sat on the couch, trying to distract myself with the TV. It didn't help. My thoughts kept returning to the upcoming dinner. At 11:30, I grabbed my bouquet and car keys and walked down to the parking lot. My old silver Honda Civic looked out of place among my neighbor's brand new SUVs. Another reminder of the life I could have afforded but somehow didn't. The drive to my mother and stepfather's house takes about 20 minutes. They live in the kind of upscale Miramar neighborhood that regular municipal employees like me only get to on business. Mansions with manicured lawns, expensive cars in the driveway, private security at the entrance. I gave my name to the guard, and he checked the list and raised the barrier. My mother's house was a 3-story Mediterranean-style mansion with whitewashed walls and a tiled roof. I parked behind Paige's brand new Lexus, took a deep breath and got out of the car, clutching the bouquet tightly. The door was opened by Maria, the housekeeper, the only person in the house who was always genuinely happy to see me. Señorita Meredith, she smiled. How good of you to come. What beautiful flowers. Thank you, Maria. Is Mama home? Yes, they're in the living room with Mr. Howard and Miss Page, and Mr. Jason is here too, so it's the whole package. Jason is Paige's husband, a manager at my dad's construction company, a narcissistic jackass with perfect teeth and zero empathy. The perfect match for my half-sister. I walked through the spacious hallway into the living room. They were sitting on couches around a coffee table laden with appetizers and wine glasses. When my mom saw me, she faintly wrinkled her nose as if she had a sudden headache. "Meredith, you're late," she said instead of greeting me. "I said I'd be there at 12. It's 11:55, I replied, trying to speak calmly. "We started the aperitif at 11:30, Paige interjected. She was wearing a pale pink dress that fit perfectly, her hair in an elaborate updo. Jason sat next to her in a light-colored suit. I didn't know about the time change. I held out the bouquet to my mother. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom." Elaine Bright, a Wembley-born woman who had just turned 55 but looked 45 thanks to regular visits to the beautician, took the bouquet with 2 fingers as if it were a dead rat. "Peonies? Really? You know I'm allergic to them." She handed the bouquet to Maria, who appeared in the doorway. "Put them somewhere. In the kitchen." I bit my lip. Mom's not allergic to peonies. She's allergic to lilies, which I'm well aware of, and I never buy them. "Sit down," my stepfather intervened, pointing to an empty chair. "Would you like a drink?" Howard had always been neutral in our conflicts with Mom. It wasn't that he was defending me, but he wasn't overtly hostile. He was just trying to smooth things over. "White wine, if I may." I sat down on the edge of my chair, feeling like an intruder. "So?" Paige began as Howard poured me a glass. "Jason and I gave my mom a spa weekend at the Oasis. Full treatment package, ocean view suite." "That's very nice of you." I took a sip of wine. "How about you?" Paige raised a perfectly plucked eyebrow. "Just the flowers Mom's allergic to?" "I'm not allergic to peonies, Paige," Mom said suddenly. "They're just ordinary. Like everything your sister does." I felt the color flood my face. A typical start to our meeting. If I gave her an expensive trinket, she'd say it was tasteless. If I offered to pay for a massage, she'd claim I was trying to insinuate her age. No matter what I do, it's always wrong and wrong. "Lunch is almost ready," Maria said, saving the day. "Can we serve?" We moved to the dining room where a table for 5 was set. I was between Jason and Howard, across from Paige and Mom. "How's work going, Meredith?" Howard asked as Maria put the salad on the plates. "Still at the municipality?" "Yes, still there." I tried to smile. "I was recently put in charge of the Westbrook Avenue redevelopment project." "Oh, that's where those awful stores and eateries are, isn't it?" Mom grimaced. "It's about time that whole block was torn down." "Actually, we're working on preserving the historic look of the street. We just want to make it more functional and—" "God, this is boring," Paige interrupted. "By the way, Jason got a promotion. He's now the director of development." "Congratulations," I nodded at Jason, who grinned smugly. "Yeah, our paychecks now allow us to think about having a second child," Paige continued, stroking her flat stomach. She already had a 3-year-old son, Brandon, who had apparently been left with a babysitter today. "You still don't have anyone, Meredith?" Mom asked, putting a bite of salad in her mouth. "At your age, I've already been married a second time." "I'm focused on my career," was my standard response. "What career?" Paige snorted. "You just sit in your office and shuffle papers. It's not a career, it's an existence." "I have an interesting job." I tried to stay calm. "I'm influencing what the city will look like in the future." "Oh, come on." Mom rolled her eyes. "Anyone could do your job. What's there to do? Checking some kind of standards? A computer would do a better job." Maria cleared the salad plates and served the main course of baked salmon with vegetables. "It looks delicious." I tried to change the subject. "Meredith, you're about to turn 33, my mom persisted. "When are you going to wise up? Why can't you be like Paige? She's got a wonderful husband, a baby. They're planning a second." "What about you?" Paige picked up on it. "An apartment in the suburbs and a job that anyone with a degree can do." "I'm happy with my life," I lied. "You are?" Mom put down her fork. "You're stuck, Meredith. You always have. I've been waiting for you to grow out of this mediocrity, but you seem comfortable in it." I felt tears coming to my eyes. It's the same thing every time. Every damn time. "Mom, No, listen to me." She held up her hand, stopping me. I'm tired of waiting for you to do something worthwhile. I'm tired of explaining to people I know what my oldest daughter does. Oh, Meredith? She works for the municipality. And that's it. No follow-up. Whereas I could talk about Paige for hours. Elaine, Howard said quietly. It's Mother's Day, so maybe you shouldn't. That's exactly why I'm talking, she cut him off. On Mother's Day, I have the right to say what I feel. And I'm feeling disappointed. I put my fork down, my appetite gone. Why do I keep coming back here? Why do I let them trample me into the dirt again and again? How about dessert? Howard suggested, trying to lighten the mood. Jason and I ordered your favorite cake, Mom, Paige smiled. Strawberry, from that French pastry shop. That's so sweet, honey. Mom stroked her hand. Maria brought in the cake and started cutting it when I decided to give it one last try. Mom, I was wondering if maybe the two of us could go out to lunch sometime. Just talk like we used to. Elaine looked at me with an expression as if I'd suggested she have dinner in the sewers. Why? She shook her head. What should we talk about, Meredith? About your boring job? About how you've once again missed your chance at a normal life? I just want to. You know what I want? She interrupted me. I want to stop feeling this disappointment every time I see you. I want to be proud of you just a little bit. But you're not giving me that opportunity. Something's broken inside of me. 32 years I've been trying to earn her approval, and it's all to no avail. I got up from the table. I gotta go. Typical Meredith, Paige snorted. As soon as the conversation gets uncomfortable, you run away. I'm not running away. My voice sounded unexpectedly firm. I just don't see the point in staying where I'm not welcome. Oh, now you're playing the victim? Mom got up too. You always do. All these years I've been trying to make something worthwhile out of you, and you… That's enough. I headed out of the dining room. Thank you for lunch. Mom followed me, her heels clacking loudly on the marble floor. Don't you dare leave when I'm talking to you. I kept walking, grabbing my bag off the coat rack in the hall. Happy Mother's Day, I said, grabbing the handle of the front door. Don't come here again. Her voice sounded like a whip. You're not welcome here. I froze for a moment, then walked out without turning around. My ears were ringing as I walked to the car. My hands were shaking so badly that I didn't get the key in the lock right away. As I sat behind the wheel, I just stared at the house I'd never felt welcome in. I could see silhouettes in the dining room window. They were continuing dinner as if nothing had happened, as if I had never been there. I started the car and slowly pulled out of the driveway. At the exit of the neighborhood, I had to pull over to the side of the road. Tears were covering my eyes and I couldn't drive. I cried with my forehead against the steering wheel, realizing for the first time that I would never get what I had so desperately wanted from my mother all these years. When I finally calmed down, I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. The account with my grandmother's inheritance was untouched. I stared at the numbers on the screen, and suddenly it hit me. I was poor by choice. I'd lived modestly all these years, hoping it would somehow help me earn my mother's approval. That if she saw how hard I was working, how I wasn't relying on my grandmother's money but building my life on my own, maybe then she would be proud of me. That's ridiculous. She'll never be proud of me. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, I'll always be not good enough for her. I took a deep breath and dialed my bank's number. When the answering machine offered to connect me to a mortgage counselor, I didn't hesitate for a second. Yes, please. It was time to stop living in the hope of an approval that would never come and start living for myself, just like Grandma Vivian wanted. On Monday, I took the day off. For the first time in my 3 years at the municipality, Carol's call didn't come easily to me. I'm used to being a reliable employee who never lets me down, but my determination to start a new life demanded action. Wembley? Are you ill? There was genuine concern in Carol's voice. No, it's just, I need a day to deal with a personal matter, I said confidently. Of course you do. You've got so much time off you could go a month without working. I thanked her and called the realtor I'd gotten from the bank the day before. One Vanessa Q, who specialized in luxury Miramar real estate, agreed to meet me in 2 hours. We met at a coffee shop near the coast. Vanessa was an energetic woman of 45 with perfect manicures and a trademark smile that never left her face. When I explained my budget and wishes, her smile grew even wider. Ms. Wembley, with these options, you can choose from the best Miramar has to offer. She opened her tablet and began showing me the options. We looked at about a dozen houses, but none really caught my eye. Either too flashy, or in the wrong neighborhood, or in need of major repairs. I have one more option, Vanessa said as we were about to say goodbye. The house just came on the market yesterday. I didn't even have time to put it in the database. Seaside Boulevard, private beach access, 3 bedrooms, a spacious terrace overlooking the ocean. She showed me the pictures and I felt my heart quicken. The whitewashed house is modern with panoramic windows and minimalist design. No frills, everything is functional and elegant. It was exactly how I had envisioned my ideal home. We could look at it right now, Vanessa suggested, noticing my reaction. The house was even better than it looked in the pictures. It was perched on a small hill floating above the ocean. Inside, there were spacious, bright rooms with high ceilings, a modern kitchen, and an open floor plan. Upstairs, there are 3 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom. The master bedroom overlooked the ocean and had its own terrace. It's been recently remodeled, Vanessa told me as I wandered through the rooms in disbelief. The previous owners are moving to Europe, so they're ready for a quick deal. I stood on the terrace, breathing in the salty air and looking out at the vast ocean. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace, like I'd found my place. I'll take it, I said, walking back into the living room. Oh, great! Vanessa immediately pulled out her cell phone. I'll contact the sellers and get the paperwork ready. With your type of deal, we can close in a week. The next few days flew by like a blur. I signed papers, transferred money, discussed details with lawyers. My grandmother's inheritance fully covered the value of the house, so I didn't need a mortgage. At work, I tried to behave as usual, even though my insides were buzzing with anticipation. Tammy was the only one I told about my purchase. You bought a house on Marine Boulevard? She didn't hide her surprise. But how? That's the most expensive neighborhood. I inherited it, I said the words out loud for the first time, from my grandmother, a few years ago. And all this time you've been living like normal, yeah, I shrugged. It's stupid, isn't it? No, not stupid, she shook her head. It's just unusual. Most people would have spent it all right away. I was waiting for the right time, I said, though I was really waiting for approval, which I never got. 10 days after calling the realtor, I was officially the owner of my dream home. I was handed the keys on Friday night, and I drove straight there to spend the first night in my new home. The house had basic furniture left behind by the previous owners, but I couldn't wait to make the space truly my own. I spent the entire next day exploring furniture stores and interior design showrooms in Miramar. I chose a minimalist style with navy accents, a deep blue sofa, light gray chairs, glass coffee tables, and an ivory rug. For the bedroom, I ordered a huge bed with an upholstered headboard and a dark wood dresser. In the guest bedrooms, I decided to keep the existing furniture for the time being. Beige beds and white dressers fit perfectly into the overall concept. I paid special attention to the kitchen. Although I'm not a great cook, I've always dreamed of a spacious kitchen with an island in the middle where I could cook while looking out at the ocean. I chose new cookware, a set of professional knives, a coffee machine, and many other gadgets I had only dreamed of before. Delivery of most of the furniture was promised in a week, but some items arrived as early as Sunday. By evening, I had a new couch and chairs for the living room and bar stools for the kitchen island. On Monday, I returned to work feeling like I was living a double life. A humble municipal clerk by day and the owner of a luxurious seaside home in the evening. The thought made me smile. Carol noticed the change in my mood. You seem different today, Wembley. Are you in love? You could say that, I smiled. To the new house. You moved? She raised her eyebrows in surprise. Yes, I bought a house on Seaside Boulevard, I answered, enjoying her reaction. On Morsky. Isn't that where the mansions have their own beach? Carol looked at me as if I'd told her I'd bought the moon. I got an inheritance, I explained. It was about time I took advantage of it. The news spread quickly through the department. Colleagues came up to me with questions. Some congratulated me. Others just looked at me curiously, as if I had turned into some exotic creature. But the strange thing was that I was not embarrassed at all. On the contrary, I felt more confident, as if I had finally shed the heavy mask I had worn all these years. Over the next 2 weeks, my house was gradually transformed. All the ordered furniture arrived. I bought paintings by local artists for the walls, ordered curtains made of natural fabrics, and selected accessories. Every detail was carefully thought out, every item chosen with love. I was especially proud of my terrace. I installed comfortable loungers, a small dining table with chairs, and even a miniature garden in containers with coastal plants. In the evenings, I would sit there with a glass of wine, watching the sunset and listening to the sound of the waves. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My apartment on the outskirts was a thing of the past. I sold most of the old furniture and moved only personal belongings, books, and a few memorabilia, including a picture with my grandmother that I put on the mantelpiece in the living room. About a month after the move, I realized I was ready to show off my new home to friends and colleagues. The idea for a housewarming party came spontaneously when Tammy and I were having lunch at a cafe across from the municipal hall. "You haven't invited anyone over yet," she said. "Are you afraid we'll stain your white sofas?" "Actually, the couch is blue," I grinned. "And I was just waiting for the house to be ready. Do you want to have a party this Saturday?" "Really?" Tammy perked up. "I'll totally be there. Who else are you going to invite?" "The girls from work, of course. Maybe a couple other people from other departments I talk to," I thought. "And maybe Vanessa, my realtor. We get along pretty well." "What about your family?" Tammy asked cautiously. She was the only one who knew about my complicated relationship with my mother. I stopped talking. It had been over 3 months since that ill-fated Mother's Day, and I hadn't contacted my mom or Paige once. They hadn't called or written either, which didn't surprise me at all. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I'm not sure it's a good idea." "Maybe it's a chance to change things," Tammy suggested. "Show them a new you, on your turf." I shook my head. "They'll just find a new reason to criticize me. They'll say I'm showing off, or that the house is too pretentious. Or they'll be shocked that you had the money for a place like this." Tammy grinned. "I'd give a lot to see their faces." The thought made me smile. It would indeed be interesting to see their reactions. Maybe Tammy is right, and this is a chance to change the dynamic of our relationship. To show them that I wasn't the battered Meredith who could be humiliated with impunity. "I'll think about it," I said finally. When I got home after work, I started to put together a guest list and party plan. Nothing too formal, just cocktails, light hors d'oeuvres, and nice music. I decided to order catering so that I wouldn't have to spend time cooking and fully enjoy the evening. The guest list was impressive. About 20 people, including all the colleagues from my department, a few people from other departments of the municipality, Vanessa and her husband, and a couple of neighbors I got to know. I sent email invitations to everyone with the date, time, and my new address. Last on the list were Mom, Howard, and Paige and Jason. I stared at their names for a long moment, hesitant to hit the send button. Finally, taking a deep breath, I added a short message. "I hope you can come and see my new home," and sent the invitation. Almost instantly, replies from coworkers started coming in, most happily accepting the invitation. Vanessa wrote that she and her husband would definitely be there and would bring a bottle of champagne. Neighbors also confirmed their participation. There was no response from the family that evening or the next day. I tried not to think about it, concentrating on preparing for the party. I ordered catering from a restaurant with good reviews, chose the music, bought candles and flowers to decorate the house. On Thursday, when I had just about resigned myself to the fact that my family would ignore the invitation, a text from Paige arrived. "We'll come. We want to see what you bought there. Mom's shocked you could even afford anything in that neighborhood. No housewarming congratulations, no thank you for inviting us." Typical Paige. And yet they're coming. The thought made me get a suckle under my spoon, a mixture of anxiety, anticipation, and a strange satisfaction. I took a half day off on Friday to finalize all the arrangements. I arranged with a cleaning service that got the house in perfect condition, met a delivery of flowers and candles, and checked the menu with the catering company. In the evening, I walked through the house, critically evaluating every detail. Everything was exactly how I wanted it. Elegant, modern, tasteful, but without being overly flashy. My home reflected my new self. A confident woman who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to get it. In the bedroom, I laid out the 3 outfits I'd bought especially for the party. After much deliberation, I chose an emerald silk dress, simple but elegant, accentuating the color of my eyes and tinting my reddish hair. Before going to bed, I went out on the terrace as I did every evening. The ocean was calm, the moon reflected in the water in a silvery path. I took a deep breath of the salty air and smiled. No matter what happens tomorrow, no matter how my family reacts, this is my home, my new life, and I won't let anyone mar it. Saturday morning was sunny and clear, perfect weather for a seaside party. I woke up early and had breakfast on the terrace, enjoying the quiet and looking forward to the evening. The catering team arrived at 10 to get everything ready for the cocktail party, which was due to start at 6 p.m. I watched them set up the tables on the terrace, laying out the dishes, preparing the bar. Everything was going according to plan. At 3 o'clock, I started getting ready. I took a bath with scented salt, did my makeup, styled my hair. I put on a new dress, low-heeled shoes, and the only expensive jewelry I had, my grandmother's pearls. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not because of the dress or the makeup, but because of the expression on my face, confident, calm, even a little defiant. I was no longer the Meredith who cringed under her mother's critical gaze. I was the mistress of my life and my home. At 5:45, I went downstairs. The house was transformed, with candles burning everywhere, light jazz music playing, and the scent of flowers and hors d'oeuvres filling the air. The catering staff took their places, the bartender behind the counter, waiters with trays prepared to meet the guests. At exactly 6, the first doorbell rang. My housewarming party was starting, and I was ready to welcome guests. All guests, including my family. The first to arrive were Tammy and Rachel. When they saw my house, they froze on the doorstep with their mouths hanging open. "Oh my God, Meredith," Rachel breathed out as she took the first steps into the spacious hallway. "This is just, wow." Tammy hugged me silently, whispering in my ear, "I'm so happy for you." Her sincerity touched me to the core. I led them into the living room where the bartender was already serving cocktails and the waiters were serving appetizers. "You really need to show us around the house," Rachel said, taking a glass of Prosecco. "Every corner?" "Sure, as soon as all the guests are here," I smiled, feeling unexpectedly proud. The guests arrived one by one. Colleagues from the municipality, including my boss Carol, did not hide their admiration. Vanessa and her husband, an elegant man with graying whiskers, presented me with a bottle of champagne and a bouquet of white roses. The neighbors, an elderly Morgana couple, brought a homemade cake and a bottle of wine from their cellar. "We are delighted to have such a nice young woman come to our neighborhood," Mrs. Morgan said, patting me affectionately on the arm. "We hope you will be happy here." An hour later, the house was filled with guests, clinking glasses and lively conversations. I took a group tour of the house, enjoying the enthusiastic comments. The Ocean View Terrace was a particular delight, where many chose to stay, enjoying the sunset and sea breeze. "I never realized our quiet Meredith lived such a secret life," Jenna from finance winked at me. "You're full of surprises." "I don't recognize myself sometimes," I admitted, sipping my champagne. The party was in full swing when the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. I knew who it was. Taking a deep breath, I went to open the door. There they were, Mom, Paige, and Jason. Howard had apparently decided not to join us, which pleased me. "Hi," I said with a strained smile. "Come on in." They came in, looking around the hall with appraising glances. Paige was wearing a white suit that must have cost the equivalent of a municipal employee's monthly salary. Mom had chosen a dark blue dress with a string of pearls, always elegant and impeccable. Jason, as usual, looked like he'd stepped off the cover of a yacht magazine. Light-colored pants, blue shirt, cashmere pullover around his shoulders. "Not bad." Paige was the first to break the silence, her tone saying otherwise. "Don't tell me it's all yours." "It's all mine." I couldn't help but smile. "Where are the other guests?" Mom asked, looking around. "On the terrace, in the living room, everywhere." I pointed toward the hum of voices. Come on in. The bar is in the living room, and the waiters are serving the appetizers. Waiters? Paige raised an eyebrow. How pretentious. I ignored her barb and escorted them into the living room, where they immediately attracted attention. Mom was instantly in her social mode, smiling, introducing herself to the guests, complimenting the decor as if she hadn't kicked me out of her house months ago. Tammy stealthily approached me as I watched them. Is that them? She asked, nodding toward me. She asked, nodding toward Mom and Paige. They are. I sipped my champagne. So far, so good. The key word is, for now. Tammy grinned. I'll be here for you if you need support. Thank you. I squeezed her hand in gratitude. The next hour passed relatively quietly. Mom chatted with Carol, Paige and Jason chatted with Vanessa and her husband. I moved from one group of guests to another, trying to be a hospitable hostess. When I found myself next to Mom and Carol, I heard a snippet of their conversation. I always knew Meredith had potential, Mom said in a tone like she was the one who'd always believed in me. She just needed time to open up. I almost choked on my champagne. Carol noticed me and smiled. Your mom tells me how proud she is of your progress. Really? I couldn't hide my surprise. Of course, darling. She gave me her trademark smile, the one that didn't have any warmth in it. I always knew you were capable of more than that. I wanted to say something, but at that moment, Vanessa announced a toast. To Meredith and her beautiful new home, may there always be happiness in it. Everyone raised their glasses. I felt tears come to my eyes from everyone's warmth and support, almost universal. After the toast, I led the remaining guests on a tour of the second floor. Mom and Paige scrutinized every room, every detail of the interior, but refrained from commenting. This tense silence bothered me more than open criticism. When we returned to the terrace, the sunset had already colored the sky in shades of pink and orange. The waiters had served a new batch of canapés and refilled the champagne. The atmosphere was warm and relaxed. I was standing at the railing looking out at the ocean when Paige appeared next to me. So, she began without preamble, where did all this come from? Robbed a bank? Find a rich lover? I turned to her, keeping my cool. An inheritance from Grandma Vivian. Grandma died 5 years ago. Paige squinted. Are you saying you've had the money all this time? That's exactly what I'm saying. She shook her head. And all that time you've been living in that cheap apartment, wearing secondhand clothes and always refusing to contribute to your mom's presents because money's tight this month? I lived on my paycheck, I answered, feeling my muscles tense. I hadn't touched my grandmother's money until recently. Why? Her voice grew louder, attracting the attention of the nearest guests. To play the victim? The poor relative? I never played the victim, Paige. My patience was wearing thin. I just didn't want to waste my inheritance. No, you pretended to be poor on purpose. She was practically screaming. To make us feel guilty. Mom came up to us, her face tense. What's going on here? Meredith has had money all this time, Mom, Paige blurted out. An inheritance from Grandma Vivian, and she'd pretended to be poor on purpose so we'd feel sorry for her. The living room grew quiet. All the talking stopped and all eyes were on us. I felt the color flooding over my face. Is it true? Mom asked, her voice sounding accusing. Yes, I had an inheritance. I tried to keep my voice even. But I never pretended to be poor. I just lived within my means. Living within your means? Paige snorted. All that talk about not being able to afford this or that. All those cheap gifts? I never asked you for money, I reminded her. Unlike some people. Paige's face contorted with anger. How dare you? I've only borrowed a couple times. 23 times in the last 3 years, I interrupted her. And I've never paid her back. Girls, not here, my mom hissed, looking back at the guests. Meredith, why don't we talk in private? But Paige was too furious to stop. All this time you could have been living a normal life. You could have been helping your family. Instead, you've been saving up and playing the poor relative. Helping my family? I couldn't take it anymore. The same family that never missed an opportunity to humiliate me? Who thought I was a loser, unworthy of even sitting at the same table with you? The same family that kicked me out of the house on Mother's Day, shouting that I wasn't welcome there. There was a long pause. Mom looked at me with a mixture of shock and anger. Paige shifted her gaze from me to her, clearly not expecting such a rebuff. "You're always exaggerating," Mom finally said. "No one kicked you out. Don't come here again, you're not welcome," I quoted her as saying. "Your exact words, Mom. I was upset, you were disrespectful." "Disrespectful?" I grinned bitterly. "I brought flowers, tried to keep the conversation going, put up with all your barbs, and then I just decided to leave when I couldn't stand it anymore. And that's called disrespect?" Mom pressed her lips together, but didn't say anything. Paige didn't back down, though. "Don't turn this around. We're talking about your deception. You've been pretending for years that you can barely make ends meet." "I wasn't pretending," I objected. "I was really living on a municipal employee's salary. My grandmother's inheritance was untouchable until recently." "But why?" Mom intervened. "Why deny yourself everything when you had money?" "I didn't deny myself anything I needed," I replied. "I just didn't spend it on show, like some people do." Paige gasped with indignation. "Are you implying that I—" "Girls!" Mom raised her voice. "It's not appropriate to make a scene in public." I looked around. Most of the guests had delicately turned away, pretending not to hear our argument, but it was obvious that everyone was listening intently. Tammy was standing nearby, ready to help. I nodded gratefully, letting her know that I could handle it on my own. "You know what?" I turned to Mom and Paige. "Let's continue this conversation in the library, alone." Without waiting for an answer, I headed for the stairs. My mom and Paige followed, and Jason hesitated, but Paige stopped him. "Stay here. It's a family thing." In the library, a small, cozy room on the second floor with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a view of the ocean, I closed the door and turned to them. "So what exactly is it that you resent so much? That I had money or that I was slow to spend it?" "We resented your hypocrisy," Paige lashed out. "How dare you pretend to be poor?" "I wasn't pretending to be poor," I repeated for the umpteenth time. "I was just living modestly, and I never once asked you for help." "You've always refused to contribute to the family expenses," Paige persisted. "I'm sorry, I can't afford my mom's present. I'm short on money this month." "Because I didn't want to spend my grandmother's inheritance on gifts for a man who never missed an opportunity to humiliate me." I looked right at my mom. "I was saving that money for the future. A new life. A life without constantly trying to earn your approval." Mom turned pale. "I never humiliated you. I was trying to motivate you. I was trying to make a man out of you." "Motivate?" I couldn't believe my ears. "You call constant comparisons to Paige, constant remarks about my failed life, how I disappoint you, motivation?" "You were always so vulnerable." Mom shook her head, taking every word to heart. "Yeah, it's my fault you say hurtful things." I grinned bitterly. "Classic." "Don't change the subject," Paige intervened. "We're talking about your deception." "What deception, Paige?" I turned to her. "I never said I didn't have any money. I said I couldn't afford to spend it this month, and it was true. I was living paycheck to paycheck." "That's still cheating," she insisted. "You gave the impression that you couldn't even afford a decent gift for your mom." "Why should I spend money on expensive gifts?" I asked. "What was I getting in return but criticism and judgment?" "We are a family," Mom exclaimed, as if that explained everything. "Family?" I shook my head. "A family supports each other. Family doesn't humiliate, doesn't criticize all the time, doesn't compare. You've never been a real family to me." My words hit the mark. Mom looked like I hit her. Paige opened and closed her mouth, unable to find something to say. "How dare you say that after everything we've done for you?" Mom finally said. "What have you done for me, Mom?" I asked quietly. "Really what? Put a roof over your head? That's a parent's duty, not a feat. I did everything else on my own. Got into university on my own. Got a job on my own. I rented an apartment with my own money. The only person who really believed in me was Grandma Vivian." "Oh yeah, Saint Vivian," Mom snorted. "Who left you money and me nothing." "Because she saw how you treated me," I replied. "And she knew that you didn't need the money, but that it would help me start a new life someday." "Which I did." "Buying a house you can't afford to keep," Paige grimaced. "What happens when Grandma's money runs out?" Sell it? I've done the math, I said calmly. There's enough money for the house and to maintain it for the next few years, and then maybe I'll find a better job or start my own business. I have options. Mom looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. You've changed, Meredith. Yes, I agreed. I finally stopped relying on your approval. I stopped trying to earn your love. It's liberating. How dare you pretend to be poor? Paige shouted again, unable to find any other argument. Paige's repeated question echoed in the room. How dare you pretend to be poor? She stood before me, flushed with anger, with trembling lips and clenched fists. Mom watched us with an expression I'd never seen on her face before, a mixture of confusion and sudden realization. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. All my life, I'd tried to avoid confrontation, always backing down, always letting them have the last word. But not today. I never pretended to be poor, I began, surprised at the calmness in my voice. I just lived on the wages I earned. If that seems like pretending to you, then the problem is your perception, not my actions. But why? Mom asked, perplexed. Why deny yourself everything if you had money? I didn't deny myself everything, I replied. I had a comfortable apartment, normal clothes, food, books, everything I needed. But you could have done so much better, Paige exclaimed. You could have bought a better car, an apartment in a nice neighborhood, brand name clothes. Why? So you'd finally recognize me as a worthy member of the family? I shook my head. I've been trying to figure out what it takes to earn your approval for a long time. Getting good grades in school isn't enough. Getting into university isn't enough. A steady job, not impressive. I thought maybe if I lived modestly, didn't brag or demand attention, you'd finally see me as a person instead of a perpetual disappointment. I went to the window and looked out at the ocean. The sun was almost gone, leaving the last golden glints on the water. For some reason, it gave me the strength to continue. Do you know what Grandma Vivian said to me before she died? She said, Meredith, this money is for your freedom. Not for a house, not for a car, not for rags. It's for your freedom to be yourself. I didn't know what she meant at the time. Now I do. I turned to them. This money has given me freedom from you, from your approval, from your criticism, from having to prove my worth. Mom turned pale, and Paige looked like I'd slapped her. How can you say that to your own mother? Mom said quietly. How could you tell your daughter she was a disappointment? I parried. How could you kick me out of the house on Mother's Day, shouting after me that I wasn't welcome there? How could you compare me to Paige for years, always not in my favor? I felt a wave of emotion building up inside me that had been building up for years. Not rage, not resentment, but a deep, piercing sadness. I've never asked for much, I continued quietly. Only acceptance, only love. But even that was too much. Mom averted her eyes. I loved you in my own way. In my own way, I echoed. It's a strange kind of love that makes a child feel worthless. You're being dramatic, Paige interjected. Mom just wanted what was best for you. Did she? I looked at her. Then why didn't she ever ask what I wanted? Why did she always decide for me what was best for me? Why was it that what you did was always right, and what I did was always wrong? Paige opened her mouth but couldn't come up with an answer. Mom looked down at the floor, avoiding my gaze. You know what the saddest part is? I continued. I really believed that I was the problem, that I wasn't good enough, not smart enough, not successful enough. I thought if I tried hard enough, if I was humble and unobtrusive enough, you would finally accept me. And even when my grandmother left me an inheritance, I didn't spend it on myself. I lived on my paycheck, saving, 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 denying myself many things, hoping. For what? That you would appreciate my hard work? My independence? I grinned bitterly. How naive I was. You didn't want a successful, confident Meredith. You needed a convenient target for criticism, a perpetual loser to shine against. Mom finally looked up. That's not fair, Meredith. I've always wanted the best for you. Wishing good and doing good are different things, Mom, I said softly. Look at yourself honestly. When was the last time you just hugged me? When you told me you were proud of me? When you were interested in my desires, my dreams? She was silent, and that silence was more eloquent than any words. Exactly, I nodded. Never. Not once in my 32 years of life. But how many times have you said that I disappoint you? That Paige is better, more successful, more beautiful? I never said Paige was prettier, Mom muttered. Really? That's all you heard? I shook my head. You know, I thought tonight would be different. That you'd see my house, my new life, and maybe finally realize that I was worth something. But you've turned even that into an accusation. Even my success is a reason for you to criticize me. I went to the library door. I don't think we have anything more to talk about. The party's going on. You can stay if you want, or leave if you prefer. I opened the door, but before I went out, I turned around. And you know what? I'm not going to try to earn your love or your approval anymore. I've been trying for 32 years, and that's enough. From now on, I'm living for myself. I walked out of the library, leaving them there, and headed back to the guests. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking slightly, but there was a strange calm inside. It was as if I'd finally shed the heavy weight I'd been carrying all my life. When I got down to the living room, I noticed Tammy's concerned look, but I smiled at her, letting her know that everything was fine. The guests continued to mingle, the music was playing, and the waiters were serving drinks. I grabbed a glass of champagne and stepped out onto the terrace, needing some fresh air and a moment of privacy. The ocean was dark, but the sky still held the last glimmers of sunset. I took a deep breath of the salty sea air and felt the tension leave my body. Is everything okay? Tammy appeared beside me, handing me a plate of canapes. Yeah, I smiled genuinely. For the first time in a long time, really okay. They've gone, she informed me. Your mom and your sister and her husband. They said to tell you they had to go. I nodded. There was no disappointment, no resentment, just relief. You know, I said, looking out at the ocean, I've been dreading this moment my whole life. I've been dreading the final breakup. And now all I feel is freedom. Tammy put her arm around my shoulders. You deserve this freedom, and this house, and all the good things that come into your life. I squeezed her hand gratefully. Let's go to the others. It is a housewarming party after all. The rest of the evening passed in a warm, friendly atmosphere. We laughed, danced, talked about future plans. No one mentioned the incident with my family, although I'm sure everyone heard raised voices. My friends and colleagues, these people who accepted me for who I am, without conditions or criticism, became my real family that night. When the last guests left around midnight, I went out on the terrace to say goodbye to Vanessa and her husband. Thank you for finding this house for me, I said, hugging her. It changed my life. A house is just walls, honey, she smiled. You changed your own life. Left alone, I was in no hurry to clean up the traces of the party. The catering service had promised to come in the morning. Instead, I took off my shoes, picked up my unfinished glass of champagne, and walked down the wooden stairs leading from the terrace to the beach. The sand was still warm from the afternoon sun. I walked along the water's edge, letting the waves wash over my bare feet, and thought about tonight, about my family, about the words that had finally been spoken. How dare you pretend to be poor? Shouted Paige, not realizing that it was never about money. It was about acceptance, about love, about the simple human warmth that I had missed so much all these years. I stopped and looked up at my house overlooking the beach. The lighted terrace, the panoramic windows that overlooked the elegant living room, it all belonged to me now. Not only physically, but also spiritually. I finally felt like the master of my life. Perhaps Grandma Vivian had envisioned this moment when she left me my inheritance. Maybe she knew that one day I would find the strength to break away from a toxic relationship and start living for real. This money is for your freedom, she said. And she was right. I raised my glass, looking up at the starry sky. To you, Grandma. And to freedom. I took one last sip of champagne and turned toward the house. It was time to go back not to the past, but to the future, which now belonged only to me. It had been a month since the housewarming party. I had fully settled into my new home, transforming it into a cozy space that reflected my personality. The library, where the last confrontation with my family took place, has become my favorite place to work and read. During this time, I never once contacted my mom or Paige, and they didn't try to contact me either. Strangely, I didn't feel any longing or regret, just a slight sadness for something that never was and never would be. There had been a change at work. I'd been promoted to deputy department head after my Westbrook Avenue redevelopment project had been praised by the city council. I was no longer hiding my potential or trying to be inconspicuous. On the contrary, I was pitching ideas, actively participating in discussions, and taking responsibility for complex projects. One evening, I was sitting on the terrace enjoying the sunset and a glass of wine when the phone rang. The number was an unfamiliar one. Meredith Wembley speaking, I answered. Meredith, hello. The voice was familiar, but I didn't immediately recognize it. It's Howard, my stepfather. Strange, he'd never called me directly before. Hi, Howard. I tried to hide my surprise. Is something wrong? No, nothing's wrong, he paused. I wanted to apologize for the other night at your housewarming party and everything that came before that. I was silent, not knowing what to say. I never interfered when Elaine was hard on you, he continued. I thought it was none of my business that you weren't my daughter. But now I realize I should have. Had to protect the child who lived in my house. Why did you decide to call now? I asked you. Because since that night your mother has changed, he answered. She thinks a lot, cries a lot when she thinks I can't see. I didn't tell her I was calling you. She's too proud to make the first move. But I know she misses you. I sighed. Howard, I appreciate your call. I really do. But I'm not ready to go back to the relationship we had. I've spent too many years trying to earn her approval. I understand. His voice sounded sincere. And I'm not asking you to. I just wanted you to know that what you said didn't go unheard. They made your mom think. Maybe in time. Maybe. I didn't encourage him. But I didn't slam the door shut. Thanks for calling. We said goodbye and I went back to watching the sunset. Howard's call stirred something inside, but not as much as it might have before. I no longer defined myself through my relationship with my mother or sister. I had my own life, my own home, my own accomplishments. One weekend, I invited Tammy and a few other friends over for a barbecue on the patio. We cooked together, laughed, and discussed future plans. When the conversation happened to touch on my family, I found I could talk about it calmly, without bitterness or resentment. You know, Tammy said as the others came down to the beach, you've changed over the months. You've become more whole. Whole? I smiled. That's an interesting definition. Yeah, she nodded. You used to have that look on your face, like you were always apologizing for existing. Now it's gone. I wondered. She was right. I no longer felt the need to justify myself, to apologize, to appear less than I was. I was finally Meredith Wembley, without the filters and limitations I'd spent years creating. That evening, after everyone had left, I opened my laptop and began working on a project I'd been putting off for a long time, designing my own architecture studio. My grandmother's inheritance was allowing me to fulfill this dream that I had given up on years ago. I named the company Liberty Design, in honor of what Grandma Vivian had said about the purpose of her inheritance. Maybe it was a risk to leave a stable municipal job for my own business, but I was no longer afraid to take risks. I was no longer afraid of disapproval. I was no longer afraid to be me. The next morning, I got up at the crack of dawn and went out on the terrace with a cup of coffee. The ocean was calm. The sun was just beginning to rise from behind the horizon. I thought about my journey, the decisions that had brought me here, the words finally spoken to my family. How dare you pretend to be poor? This question from Paige, once accusatory, now sounded very different in my head. How dare I pretend to be less than I am? How dare I hide my potential, my dreams, my true self for fear of being rejected? I wasn't going to pretend anymore. Not poor, not rich, not humble, not ambitious, just me, the real Meredith Wembley. And that was the most valuable legacy Grandma Vivian had left me, not money, but the lesson that true freedom comes when you stop living for the approval of others and start living for yourself. I raised my cup, saluting the rising sun, to a new life, to freedom. Here's to the last word I finally have.